Welcome to the Bro Chat for the People podcast, brought to you today by a tutor in Lincoln, Nebraska. Your teacher will praise you. If you always get abused by your teacher and now you are sick with it, want some appreciable words from your teacher, then you need our help. We can help you by doing your work. If take our services, then we will make best projects for you. And your projects will be the best in your class, and your teacher will praise you. I can't do this.
Keep going.
And you will make an impression on your classmates. We will give you the best projects. Brought to you by a tutor in Lincoln, Nebraska. All right, let's go. All right. Tommy boy, this is Dan, and I am with my number one bro chatter, Thomas. Thomas, say hello.
Hello, bro chat.
And for all you bro chatters out there, we have a special guest for you today. Tom, who do we have on today?
We got our, my brother and our political expert / relationship advisor.
Relationship advisor, and let me tell you that politics and relationships, that is no coincidence that he is an expert on both. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tommy. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Many time listener, first subscriber to the channel.
Oh,
he is. John was our first subscriber to the channel.
That's true. He was the first subscriber. I think was he before us or other than us too?
Well, he was other than you. I can't subscribe to my own channel.
That's right. But I remember, I seriously remember subscribing pretty early on.
Yeah, you were technically the first, but I don't think you count.
I don't count because I am one of the infamous bro chatters. So, John, I don't know if you know this, but that really does mean a lot to Tom and I.
It is. Oh, we still can't get half of our friends on the other bro chat to subscribe to this.
On the original bro chat, which is a Google Hangout with all of our bros, we can't get them to subscribe to this because they just can't be bothered. So it's seriously assholes. Like, who are we friends with?
Oh man, it's not hard, folks. You just click the subscribe button at the bottom of the video. It's very easy.
See?
Yeah, you got it appears right on the right hand side of the screen every time you go on YouTube. It tells you if there's any new videos. You just click on it, sit there and listen to it. It's great.
He should be our marketing advisor too.
I should be. Paid, heavily paid. How much do you guys make? I insist on 20% of what you guys are making.
All right, you got it. 20% of zero is zero.
Well, you get 20% of the joy we get from making this.
That's true. It is quite the outlet. We really do love it.
All right, Dan. So, first we're talking our political consultant here. Obviously, we got the South Carolina and the Nevada caucuses. In the South Carolina primary.
First, I think before we get going, I know I haven't. This is the first time I've talked to John since I was down in Florida last, and I would just like to extend my heartfelt congratulations on getting engaged.
Oh, thank you, Danny. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's I saw you a couple weeks before it happened down in Florida, and then all of a sudden you were just engaged, and it was some of the most wonderful news I've received all year. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it. I'm engaged to the best girl ever. So there you go.
Boom. This is why he's our relationships advisor.
Say things like that.
He always knows what to say,
especially when it's recorded.
Yeah. Quiet, dude.
Someone's
in the doghouse.
Anyway, yeah. Let's not talk about that. But anyway, let's talk about South Carolina, the Republican.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
I kind of want to talk a little bit more. I know you guys have touched on some of the sort of philosophical, I guess, stuff about elections and candidates, and you've gotten into some of their stuff. But what I want to talk about,
I don't know how philosophical we actually got. But But go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk about some of like, I guess what you would call it is the horse race aspect of it, I don't know if a horse race is really the best analogy. It's more a little bit like a NASCAR race, I guess, because, like, as the race goes on, people just pump money into the various candidates, and as they fall behind, people pump less money into them, and they basically just run out of gas, and they just come to a stop, and really the last person standing wins. So trying to figure out in South Carolina whether or not any of the cars are going to run out of gas, or who's going to pull ahead, or who's going to do better, or who's going to, that kind of stuff. That's what the race is all about.
I think this NASCAR analogy is actually better than you even anticipated, considering during these election cycles you see the same thing 500 times in a row, going round in circles.
And it's good that we bring it up for South Carolina as well, because as we know, NASCAR is a southern sport. So this is perfect.
I don't know if I would call it a sport. It's kind of like it's kind of like a soap opera, right?
John, you're going to offend a lot of people here.
Okay.
All of our NASCAR fan listeners.
Yeah, your national listeners. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of how these races usually turn out, and we saw it in Iowa, we saw it in New Hampshire, and I've seen it before in other races, is what happens with the undecided voters. Like, where do they break at the last minute, right? That has a huge impact on the race. Just some background. I've been, I was paying attention in several Massachusetts elections many, many years ago, where you saw, like, even in an electorate that's mostly Democrats, you've seen Republicans take the candidacy because of this, like Scott Brown, who won the Senate, or Paul Cellucci, who won the governorship. You'll see people break at the last minute towards the new candidate, overthrowing the incumbent. So you have that, there's like a principle, right? If you're an undecided voter, what that means is that whoever the establishment or whoever the front runner is, whoever the person who's had the most attention, who's the most well known, is not the person you're going to vote for, right? Because you're still undecided, right? And you know that person the best, and they're the part of the whatever it is, right? It's also a thing about enthusiasm, right? So when it came to Scott Brown's election to the Senate back in 2009, I want to say 2010, 2009, what had happened is that the Republican electorate in Massachusetts, which is relatively small, but not as small as people think, was very enthusiastic about voting because of the whole Obamacare thing that was going through, right? And the story at the time was that they had a chance to stop Obamacare if they could elect a Republican to the Senate and block it, right? Because that would deny them the 60 votes necessary to win.
Yeah, failure.
Failure, as we know. But the voters of Massachusetts broke and covered about, 15 to 20 points in the last 2 weeks against Martha Coakley, who was, she wasn't the incumbent, but she might as well have been, because she was a party Democrat who had been around forever, right?
Well, this was after the Kennedy death, right?
Right. This is right after the Lion of the Senate, Ted Kennedy, dropped dead. May he rest in peace.
Thank God.
No. Hey, if we're going to talk about people bad-mouthing Scalia after he dies, I mean...
It's true. May he
rest in peace, honestly.
Rest in peace,
This is a long time.
Timing was fine, but may he rest in peace. So, basically, that you see in that race, the candidate with the most enthusiasm, the unknown one, is the one everyone breaks for, right? If you speed it up to, if you want to take a look at Iowa this year, right? The Real Clear Politics average for the 5 days going into that election was Rubio increasing a point every day, right? And that's on average in the polls, right? So people were kind of sick of Donald Trump. He's been the face of what's going on, right? The more the voters saw him, the more they get sick of him, right? And Ted Cruz and him were both doing their ground game and all that sort of stuff. But Rubio, relatively, I wouldn't say unknown, but like kind of behind in the pack, hadn't really been involved yet. People were kind of looking for someone different than the two of them. So they broke to him at the last minute, right? Mm-hmm. In heavy numbers, heavy numbers, providing him with a clear third place finish, right? In New Hampshire, Rubio was expected to do well. Trump was expected to win. Cruz wasn't gonna play super well in New Hampshire, right? So where did all those undecided last minute voters break to at the last minute? Well, they all ended up going with Kasich because, the people of New Hampshire are not thoroughly disturbed by the fact that he's lacking eyebrows, which is like, one of the more disturbing facial characteristics someone can have.
They were disturbed by Rubio's debate performance, though, I do believe.
Yes. That's part of what affects it, right? So you have.
Wow, you're not kidding. He doesn't have eyebrows.
Yeah, no. He looks like what's his face from Lord of the Rings?
Grima Wormtongue.
Grima Wormtongue. That's right. He's creepy looking too.
But he's so nice, though. He's so nice.
Yeah, he's like a little Grima Wormtongue.
Well, he's from Ohio. Can you really blame him? For being nice. They don't have the they don't have the record to be mean to people. You can only be mean to people if you're just like.
If your sports teams are good.
Exactly. Anyway, yeah. So you saw that happen in the Republican race, and we've seen it in the Democrat race. We've seen that exact effect happen in Nevada, right? In the Nevada caucuses, which Hillary was leading 2 weeks ago by 20 points, right? And there's a poll out today that have the two of them in a virtual tie, Sanders and Clinton, right? And Nevada is not a state in which Sanders is supposed to do well demographically, right? There's tons of Hispanics there. There's not the same number of young voters. There's all this stuff that is supposed to put Nevada squarely in Hillary's camp. That stuff's all there, but people are sick of her. People are sick of her face. People are sick of her coughing.
She's a complete whack job.
Yeah, he's a total nut. The thing is, he's unknown compared to her, and he's offering an alternative, right? And he is a whack job, but people don't quite understand that, right? Because he's talking about the working class and all that garbage.
But she's a witch, though.
Yeah, people don't like. Even Democrats aren't terribly fond of her. Right?
No,
they're like,
not at all.
Do you think they're just so bleak that they're like, really, we have Clinton or we have Bernie Sanders, we better kill Scalia and pack the court?
We can talk about that later. We can have a different podcast if you guys want about conspiracy theories.
Look, just one thing is that the gonads of President Obama, who just last week smothered Scalia with a pillow and is now not and is now not going to his funeral.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't want to have like the Edgar Allan Poe story, right? Scalia is like heart beating underneath it. Scalia pops out from under the casket and goes, "Who's you?" There's your literary reference for the day.
Educating our viewers or our listeners, one day at a time.
One day at a time. Yeah, total sidetrack right there. No, I mean, the funny thing is that in 2008, I want to say 2007, Obama, as a senator, was like saying all these things about how the Senate has the right and the power and the duty to like vet all the candidates and not vote in people they don't like, and it was all against Alito, right? But the thing is, the moment that the position is switched, right? Like, you could have one of those, I think Colbert had like a video where Trump argued with Trump about something.
Yeah.
You could easily do the same thing with Obama on the Supreme Court justice issue. It's just kind of like, It's politics as usual, folks. It's gross. But
Yeah.
so anyway, and I don't want to editorialize too much about the current president. People know what they know about him.
John, stop using such big words. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Shut up, Danny. Is that short enough for you?
I took the SAT in like 2008, man.
Yeah. So basically, I think what this means is that Sanders will probably win Nevada, or he'll come really, really close, which is Hillary camp's trying to downplay it, but it's actually a big, big deal. The longer there is a period of time in between when the race starts in earnest in a state, the worse that the incumbent candidate or the the front runner, you might call it, the best known, most name recognition, most well recognized, the worse that front runner will do over time. It's just a principle, right? Because the undecided voters will go to that person unless they think he's a total wacko like Todd Aiken, and then they'll just go back to safe vote.
John, you've definitely been listening to our podcast, because that's at least the third time we've mentioned Todd Aiken.
I mean, he's such a great example of how this principle might not work given the wrong person, right? Absolutely. And if Trump's the nominee versus Clinton, then we could see that principle happen again. But enough about that, right? So what does this principle mean about North Carolina, right? This is the interesting
South
question.
Carolina?
South Carolina. Really? I have it wrong on the piece of paper.
I know, I saw
I'm making this mistake nonstop. So what does this mean about South Carolina? Trump is expected to win. Trump has a commanding lead. Trump also has a lot of negatives, and he's been hit with a lot of ads, right? Now, I don't know how much his vote will come back, right? His numbers will fall. We've seen a slight fall in the last couple of days. He's gone from 35, 36 to about 33. In one poll, he's at 29, right? So we're looking at a possibility that Trump will fall all the way down to like 20, like the same kind of numbers you got in Iowa.
Okay, who's been getting those numbers as they're falling? Have you noticed? Or is it just spread out evenly, or is it one group?
Cruz, I think, is leading in a couple polls.
I think it's a really. I've seen multiple polls. One of the things about the South Carolina polling is that it's been all over the place. I haven't been able to predict exactly what's going to happen based on the poll numbers, because the poll numbers have been really erratic. Some polls have Rubio picking up those numbers. Some polls have Cruz picking up those numbers. The question is, like, if there is a state where Cruz is more likely to pick up last-minute undecided voters, it would be South Carolina, because of his conservatism, his chops, right, and also his Christianity and all that sort of stuff. Not that Rubio isn't Christian or anything. It's just that he's so very, I don't know. He's just so very Christian about how he's Christian.
You mean to say he's very Catholic about how he's a Christian?
No. Rubio, that's Rubio.
No, that's what I'm saying. Rubio.
Cruz
is Christian about being.
Cruz is so Baptist about it. I don't mean to offend any Baptists, but I mean it's so. It sounds funny to the ear of a lot of people, especially people from up north. When he talks, it sounds like, I don't know, like you're being sold by some like sort of, you know what I mean? He just doesn't sound acoustically.
Oh, totally.
It sounds like he's just a sleaze, even though his record is 100% clean and he says all the right things. It's just how he says everything that makes my skin crawl just a little bit.
Yeah, right? No, I'm with you there.
But he could pick up that in South Carolina, that he might pick up those voters. They might swing to him in the last minute because he's not Trump. He's very consistent. He's very Christian and all that sort of stuff. So he could pick up those votes, right? In addition to those factors, I just read a story the other day about a super PAC that's been doing something very different. Usually what super PACs do with all their money is They pour it into television advertisements, right? Millions and millions of dollars. We saw Jeb Bush's super PAC has spent, I don't know, $50 million in TV ads or something like that with almost nothing to show for it, right?
Right.
Well, what Cruz's super PAC has been doing is they set up an organization in North Carolina months ago with paid staffers.
You mean South?
Yeah, South Carolina. Paid staffers, right?
There's no real difference.
And these people have been going door to door. Paid volunteer. Like, they're not volunteers. They're paid, right? They're on message. They're intelligent. They're smart. They dress well, right? They don't look like a bunch of shambling volunteers. Like, you're not going to get that crazy old lady who's got, like, the American flag contact things, like, showing up to your door, like, asking you to vote for Cruz, right? Which just means, like, oh, God, I'm never going to vote for this person, right? They're looking very professional. They're like, so apparently he has the best ground game by far in South Carolina, which can make a big difference. I understand that Rubio's ground game has improved a lot, but something like that doesn't usually show up in the polls. It can create a lot of enthusiasm, and it might drive his numbers up really high, right? Rubio has the charm. He's got the sincerity. He's got a lot of people who are really enthusiastic about him going, right? He's got a lot of people making calls. They made 20,000 calls yesterday.
What?
They're touching a lot of people. They're trying to get people excited about it. In addition, he's also picked up 3 really important endorsements. Now, I'm not sure how much these things mean, but they mean a lot to some people, right?
I mean, you look at, especially like, exactly, like Nikki Haley. I mean, the governor, the current governor.
Yeah,
that's got to mean something.
Current governor, it means something. Trey Gowdy, who's a very popular member of the House down there, who hammered Hillary on in the Benghazi hearings. He's quite popular, and Tim Scott, who is, I think, he was a Tea Party guy. He's just very well liked in South Carolina. A black Republican senator from the extremely white, non-diverse party or whatever. He's got these great endorsements, right? He's got those people's staffs and those people's machines trying to turn out votes for him, right? So he could potentially pick that up. Bush has got the Bush name. The people of South Carolina do like Bush. Bush, especially with the veterans, right? Because even though he had these wars and whatever, like, he went and visited those guys in the hospitals. Like George W. Bush is, like, personally very popular in South Carolina. I think he's like a 6% approval rating amongst Republicans.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's actually I think a big deal for Bush, because, I mean, he's also got the money. The way he puts it, I mean, I know he finished 4th in New Hampshire, but for him that was kind of a win. Like, the way his campaign had been doing, to finish 4th was kind of a big deal. And then also to have George on the campaign trail with him, George, who, in 2000 lost New Hampshire to McCain and then won South Carolina, and that really propelled him to victory in 2000 for the Republican Party. So Bush, and still, I mean, I know that was 15 years ago, but Bush is still a very popular figure in South Carolina.
He is. And looking at the polls, I've seen there's 2 separate polls that have him taken in the last 2 days that have him at 14%, a little bit behind Cruz and Rubio. So, I mean, he could be doing well there. Another thing about Cruz is that I suspect a lot of Carson's voters will jump ship the last minute, just because he's not really in the race. So they don't really want to throw out their votes. And in terms of, like, a non-establishment candidate who's also, like, not a jerk, they might want to go to Cruz, but some of them might go to Rubio, some of them might go to Bush. It's hard to say exactly where they're going to go. Or if they'll jump ship at all. There's a chance that they won't. But the one person who I don't see doing well in South Carolina is Kasich, right? He doesn't have any eyebrows. He doesn't play well in the South. He's basically campaigning in Michigan right now, which is in like March 8th. Or, like I don't understand what his strategy is. He's an idiot. Like he just needs to go away, as far as I'm concerned. He's just a big dummy. And I think a lot of South Carolina voters would probably agree, right? So that's your kind of like, that's a lot of different stuff that kind of clues you into what's going on the ground that might affect how the race is going to turn out. And I can't make a solid prediction as to who's going to, like maybe tomorrow we'll see, or I guess today, on Friday, we'll see something come out that'll give us a really great indicator as to what's going to happen on Saturday.
Yeah.
But it's a tough, you can't figure it out. At least I can't figure it out right now, based on what I've been reading, and what I've been looking at. And I don't know if Trump is imploding, right? We've seen him, he's been the rubber man all year long. Like nothing stuck to him. A couple of attacks that might be working are, his support, monetary support for Planned Parenthood. Cruz has been pushing that pretty hard with his advertisements. He's purchased, I think, $2.5 million worth of ads for the last, 2 days. And he's probably going to push that a lot. And he's also going to want to hit Rubio so that people don't get sick of the two of them and just end up switching to Rubio, right? So that could be really important. And I don't know though. I mean, Trump supporters, it's hard to say exactly whether or not they're going to show up to vote, like how many of them are listening or care about kind of what's going on in the race, like how his numbers will hold up, right?
Yeah.
I suspect he'll come back some. I'm not sure. Like if he hits over 30%, he's going to have a clear win, right? But he could easily come underneath that. If he stays above 30%, one of the reasons why that might be is because people don't end up swinging for one candidate in particular. Even though people usually do, they might all kind of separate their votes out between Cruz and Rubio, and maybe even Bush.
Yeah, which is what we kind of saw in New Hampshire.
It is kind of what we saw in New Hampshire. That could happen again. That's one. I don't think it's that likely, but I think that could happen again.
Now, do you think the comments from Pope Francis today of him not being necessarily, where he said, Pope Francis said, I think people who only build walls and don't build bridges are not Christian. Do you think that could potentially hurt someone like Donald Trump in a very Christian state like South Carolina?
No, because it's a very Christian state, but it's not a particularly Catholic state, right?
Okay, that's fair.
Christians in this country, there's a long history of them mistrusting the Pope. There's a long history of Catholics in this country mistrusting the Pope, right?
Yeah.
Rubio is not going to benefit from Pope Francis's comments at all, right? That's not going to really help him in any way. The Republicans in general, even myself, right? Do you guys listen to it like what the Pope said and think to yourself, I have to change who I'm going to vote for, right?
Well, no, because I already know who I first voted for in New Hampshire, and then know who I'm going to, supporting throughout the general election.
Well, I have just issues with this comment by the Pope, anyways. I love the Pope. I'm Catholic, but I
love the Pope. He's a good guy.
This is the exact quote. A person who thinks only about building walls wherever they may be and not building bridges is not Christian. Okay, Pope Francis. We're not talking about metaphorical or physical or spiritual walls and boundaries. We're talking about a physical wall at the southern part of our border, which we're a sovereign nation. We have the right to defend our borders from people. And you can't just go talking to us about, we should just essentially invite everyone in. Well, he can talk about it.
If you're the Pope, you kind of have an obligation to promulgate the Christian word, and that is kind of a Christian idea.
Is this a Christian idea?
I think it is. No, I absolutely think it is. It's a very Christian idea. Welcoming that you're tired and give me your tired, give me your poor. That's a very Christian idea. And I know it gets bogged down and more complicated when you talk about a sovereign nation. But as far as the Catholic Church's duty goes, I believe that is something that's something that has to be talked about.
But
and
to
something
call
that I don't
somebody-
think Pope Francis is wrong in saying.
So, I mean, he's essentially saying anyone who believes in building that wall is not a Christian.
No, he's not. He's
Yes,
saying
he is.
he's saying
It
people
does-
who
it sounds a
people
lot
who
like
people who
person who-
only build walls and don't build bridges. That's what he's saying. He's not saying people who specifically are going to build that wall on the southern border are not Christian.
That's what he was referring to.
Because he was asked about Trump, and he's talking about Trump
was
only
talking about
building
the-
walls and not
he's
building
talking
bridges.
about
You can do
He's talking
both.
about that plan in particular. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can do
I-
both. You can build a wall if you really want to, but you can also build bridges. And I don't
I mean,
think
Do
Pope
we
Francis
not
would have a problem
already
with that.
have a bridge
I don't know if we really need any
called legal
bridges
immigration?
necessarily, physical ones.
Well, no, we don't need any physical, but we already have a legal immigration policy. You know,
Right.
a lot of people say it should be reformed, but we already have a bridge. We need to build walls so that the bridge can be used, and everyone's just not swimming across.
The bridge is
Literally.
terrible, Tom. Tom, you know that the bridge is terrible.
It is terrible.
It's a completely bogged down process that takes too long. I mean, we knew a
solution
professor.
to it?
We knew a professor at Ave Maria University, and it took her like 12 years to become a U.S. citizen, and she was Canadian. I mean,
Okay.
come on,
So
that's
the-
ridiculous.
So the solution to that is to just let everybody in, no questions asked?
No, that's not what I'm saying, and that's probably not what Pope Francis is saying.
That sounds exactly like what you said.
Yeah, because it's a question of here's my main issue with it. My main issue with his comment, right, is that how this country polices its borders is like the policy is a prudential policy, right? It is just the kind of thing that, if you believe in subsidiarity, should be left up to the people of this country. As to, like Vatican City
Subsidiarity
itself-
should be left up to the people of Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and California.
Right. Well, I mean,
Well, there's also coming
Vatican
all the
City
way out.
itself has 50-foot walls around it, right? Like, that's a prudential decision on their part, and I don't think that's a bad idea, right? Because they can't, like, because if they didn't have any walls, if they didn't have a Swiss guard who monitored who came in and all that sort of stuff, right? Like, the Pope would be mobbed 24/7 by all these millions of Catholics who want to take a selfie with him, right?
And probably killed back in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, so you need, like, prudentially, you need to have sort of, you need to have a policy that makes sense for where you live, right? And who's best to decide that, right? Well, we are, you would think, right? Because we live here. And that's how we decide things in this country. We don't have, like, a king, so we are supposed to elect people who who make these prudential decisions on our behalf, right? In terms of how we care for other people, right? It's more like we should do our best to care for them, like the poor and needy who are here, right? And if we can take more poor and needy people, maybe you can make an argument that we should take more, the system should work better or whatever, right? But one of the most important things that we can do as the United States is to help the people, like, where they are, establish, like, civil society so that they don't feel like they have to come to the United States to have a chance to have a good life, right? And that's not a military question. That's sort of like an investment question, right? Or at least that's my opinion. Like the fact that gangs are in Mexico, like one of the reasons why Mexico is so dangerous is because drug dealers can bring in tons of drugs through the border, right? Because we don't have a wall. So, and then they sell all their drugs here and bring the money down to Mexico, and they'll fight about it all the time and make life very dangerous, right? The wall might not be a bad thing for Mexico and the people who live there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we're preventing people from coming in the country. All you have to do to get into this country is buy a plane ticket or get in a car and drive here, right? You just drive through border security. They're not turning everyone around from Mexico who wants to come visit the United States, right? The line goes, like, it's miles long at the border, right? You just drive up in your car and you drive into the country, right? It's not hard. You just can't sneak a truck full of drugs past, the border agent. I don't know. I don't know how we got on. I didn't mean to talk about this. I think.
Well, I think it's an important issue that's facing our country that we want to get our opinions out there, and that's why we have this podcast. I mean, this isn't even like the refugee problem, like we know that Danny doesn't want to get into. This is this isn't just people, running from really war-torn countries. Sure, there's
my only opinion of the
failing.
refugee problem. My only opinion of the refugee problem is those people who are peaceful and good people and are just trying to get away from the violence of their country should be able to come into a place that can and has the ability to house them and take care of them.
They weren't letting in the Christians who were being persecuted, but they were letting in Muslims. When the Christians over in the Middle East were, being crucified and things, they wouldn't let them in as refugees.
I need a source for that.
And
if that's the case, look, if that's the case, then obviously I have a problem with it. I'm not saying that only Muslim refugees should be allowed in this country. I'm saying refugees in general. They're refugees for a reason. They're trying to escape a war-torn, fucked up society and trying to get somewhere where they can actually raise their families in a better place.
Why don't anyone?
And why don't they have why can't they have that as a human right? Why don't they have that as a human right?
I don't know. I have an issue with coming to a country, being a refugee, while our military's over there fighting your war, and then you come to our country and we're like, why don't you stay and fight?
That's not their fault. That's our fault.
So
but Danny, here's the point about the right. The question is to whether or not it's a human right. Every right comes with this, every right is paired with an obligation, right? If they have a right to come here, right, then we have an obligation to house them, to pay for everything that they need to make that transition, right? We have an obligation in some way to transport them here and provide them.
And Catholic social teaching would agree 100% with what you're saying, John.
Right, but here's the prudential question, right? How many people, right, have this, what is this right based on, and how many people possess it, right? How many people possess the right to our private property, or your private property, or Tom's private property, right? Because that's what it's going to take for us to bring them here.
We'd probably have to go to Aquinas.
How much of our private property are we willing to part with?
Well,
we'd probably have to go to Aquinas to figure that question out.
No, I know what Aquinas would say.
Oh, really? Would you know that because of my Catholic social teaching presentation that I did in Father Bob's class?
No. Shout out to Father Bob.
Which Father Bob, thank you for
Father
telling
Bob's
me
best,
2 years later on my graduation day, telling me that it was the best presentation that he'd ever had.
No, I mean, Thomas Aquinas doesn't believe in private property, so I don't think we should go to him.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Tom.
Well, look,
Thomas Aquinas does believe in private property.
No, look, go to the one where it talks about the starving guy, stealing bread. Is it wrong? And they say everything is God's. Yeah. He says it's not wrong because everything is God's, and you have a right to it.
We're talking fundamentally right now. Fundamentally, we're not talking about borders. We're not talking about sovereign nations. We're not talking about individual states. We're talking about something that is inherently human.
What are we talking about?
You have a right to live.
Okay.
So if you are a starving person, and this is what Thomas Aquinas would say, if you are a starving person, or you have a starving family, and you have no other option but to steal from somebody who has an excess, then you can, morally speaking, you are allowed to do that.
Because it's yours anyway, and it's not theirs. It's not anyone's. It's God's. Because there is no private property.
No. It's the question.
No, we're talking about extenuating circumstances right now.
We're talking about a question of stewardship, right? That it's all God's, right? But you're the steward of the property from which you've been given, right? And as a good steward, you're supposed to provide, right? Because you know that you didn't create that thing, right? That you are the beneficiary of God's good gift, right? That you need to share that gift with others if possible, right? And to those who need it, right? Does that mean you need to have that everyone needs to live at a really low level, right? Because everyone's giving away.
No, that's not what I'm saying. This is a matter of pure necessity.
But here's the point, though, right? Is that for millions of people in this country, right? And you've done this because you worked on a landscaping company, and I've done this, right? And a lot of 10 of our 20 listeners, or you guys' 20 listeners, have done this.
Shut up, there are 40.
It's true, there are 40.
Just getting
I'll
consistently
fight you.
40 views.
I'll fight you right now, John.
Yeah, have worked at a job, right, where your wages haven't gone up, right, and you're paying taxes on something, and someone who's here illegally is not paying taxes, or getting paid in cash or whatever, and the market for your labor is so saturated that you're not getting any raises, and you basically have no future in whatever position you're holding, right? Because, you know, that person, like, does that person have a right to come here, work that job, right, for whatever it is, right, and basically deprive you of the chance to make, like, put your, I don't know, talents to use and make a wage that makes sense, right? Well, the answer should be no. And like, there's millions and millions of people out there who are going with Donald Trump because their wages have been flat for 15 to 20 years. Like Samuel loves Donald Trump because he's a roofer, right? And like him and his brother are breaking their back and to like make some money, right? But you got all these Mexican crews or crews from other countries, and they're not subject to the same regulations. They're not subject to the same taxes. They're not subject to the same working condition requirements, right? And so they come in and they're underbidding them, right? And they have to go out and convince people to pay them more, right, than someone else who can do it for cheaper, right? That's in terms of like prudence. It doesn't make sense for a country to have a policy where that's occurring to millions.
I agree with you. I'm not saying that the borders should be 100% open and any Mexican or any Hispanic or any Syrian refugee or any European or anyone in the world should just be able to come here without any sort of credential or without illegally and come in and just take jobs of somebody who's in a sovereign nation.
Unless they need to.
No, but Tom, you're
I'm talking about this in a very practical manner. You're talking about it in a very liberal manner.
Tom, you are downplaying what I mean by need. What I mean by necessity.
Well, what you mean by need might be different than what other people mean.
Well, see, that's
You're
fine,
but
that's not what I'm talking about. That's fine. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the necessity, literally for survival. Like, if you don't do this, you will die. That's what I'm talking about, and that's what St. Thomas Aquinas is talking about.
Which is why the question of how are we best to deal, or how are we best to help poor people in other countries, right? Because there's hundreds of millions of people who would move here in a second if they could, right? Because the living standard here is way higher, right? And they probably do feel like they might, in fact, need more, right? The question is how to best provide for that prudentially, right? And a flippant comment about the border and the walls and all that sort of stuff doesn't really seem to address the issue in, like, it seems like it seemed flippant. It seemed like it was, like, not...
You're talking about the Pope's comments.
Yeah, what the Pope said, flippant, it seemed like he was saying it without really considering, like, what's kind of, like, at stake practically with how things work in this country, with how the immigration system works, how all that other sort of stuff. Like,
and I can agree with that. I'm not saying the Pope should be more careful with how he speaks, because this is a problem, not necessarily a problem, but this is something that we've seen with Pope Francis before, is where he says kind of what's on his mind without getting it okayed by his theological, mastermind, his theological, groupies or whatever. I don't know if I should say it like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's how they would want to be described.
But you know what I mean. But like, he doesn't have, and he just kind of goes off the cuff. And he's done this before. This is not the first time it's happened, which is why I'm not saying I necessarily have a problem with it. What I'm saying I have a problem with the Pope's comments is more based on the media taking it and just instantly spinning it like, oh, the Pope's okay with contraception in the Catholic Church, and also the Pope hates Donald Trump and thinks he's not a Christian. Which, by the way, factually, he probably isn't.
Yeah, well, that's
because he sips the
besides
wine
the
and
point.
he sips the wine and he eats the crackers and he's a Christian. Like that's his own words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was talking about Ben Carson before the Iowa caucuses about how, faith doesn't change a person. You're
yeah,
like,
that's because he doesn't have any.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Donald, for that. But that's beside the point whether he actually is or not. Calling him not Christian. Because
Sure.
I think it applies to everybody who's kind of like sees this idea like, yeah, let's build a freaking wall. And you're like, anyone who wants to build a wall is not Christian. You're just like, really? Like, you're supposed to make me feel guilty about building a wall at our southern border where we have, drugs and guns and, who knows what kind of terrorists coming in, but anything.
I guess the other problem I would have with it too is that Pope Francis throughout his entire papacy has been saying, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? And then all of a sudden he comes out here and he says, well, he's not a Christian.
Yeah, that's true.
Or somebody like that is not a Christian. And you're like, wait a second, Pope Francis. Like, look, Frank. This is not how you've been talking for your entire papacy.
Yeah.
But other than that, other than those two big things, I don't really have a problem with what he said.
Oh, God. Oh, Danny. You're so flippant.
That's not what I'm doing. No, what are you talking about? There are many sides to this issue. And I'm just expressing them all at the same time, so it may appear that way. But I am firm. I am talking about all the different separate sides to this issue at the same time, so it may appear that I am flippant, but I am firm in all of these beliefs.
This is like watching a Danny v. Danny debate.
Yeah. Get out of here. Both of you two are brothers, and you have this telepathic communication that's driving me backwards, and I hate it. You're driving me into a corner, and I'm not even in a corner.
He lashes
I stand by everything I said. I literally stand by it. I put it on a big piece of paper that I've stood up next to me, and I'm standing by it. You guys are assholes.
This is kind of like what we did to Grace back when we were younger. Just
yeah.
And
attack people baselessly.
And Grace is married with a child on the way. Who's laughing now? No, I'm kidding.
We're still laughing.
Is Grace laughing about this? I don't think Grace is laughing about this.
Yeah, probably not.
Has she been listening lately, by the way? Have her and Paul been listening?
I think so.
I know Paul's been, because Paul talks about it on the bro chat every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know who hasn't been listening, who deserves a shout-out?
Who?
Teddy Pence.
Yeah, he wants to come on here and be a guest, but he wants to be a guest, minute of it.
We literally had to force him to subscribe to this stupid channel today.
And I'm not even sure he did.
And I'm not even sure he did. And he doesn't even listen to any of the podcasts. What is he doing up in Tampa? So he goes to work, he comes home, and then he does nothing. Does he listen to the podcast? No, he's got an hour commute. He could listen in the car if he wanted to. He's got 10 gigs of data. He's got plenty of data to listen to this podcast. No, he's got too many other things to do, and he's just, you know what? He's the real jerk here. I'm calling him out right now, Teddy Pence. Like, you're the least supportive friend I've ever had.
Okay, guys, I gotta run, but I just want to make a quick shout out to Pat Harrington. Hopefully he's listening, and also
the most
beautiful and wonderful person in the world, Annie Bateman, whom I love and am getting married to. And thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Wait, John, you're a relationships expert. We should at least ask you one relationship question, right?
All right, go for it.
All right, so say you're interested in this girl, right? And you go to see her, and you're gonna ask her out, but right before you see her, you hear that one of your friends asked her out first, and went out with her last night.
Last night?
Yes.
Like the night before you see her. Like, do you still ask her out? No, right? You don't ask her out, right? You wait, you bide your time.
Never bide your time.
I don't know. I think it might actually. It depends. It kind of depends on the girl and the situation going on.
This is terrible advice, Sean. You can't just give qualifications all the time.
Okay.
Give him an
You're the
answer.
relationships
My
expert,
guess-
John.
Delilah.
My guess is that you should probably ask her out to coffee or something like that.
Okay.
And
Wait,
in
who
that
said
way,
we're talking about me?
well, I'm sorry, Dan. I just assumed. Right? You talk with her, you ask her like if she wants to go to coffee and just talk, just so that she understands, right? That maybe she's like dating. Girls can date multiple guys at the same time. I mean, it's not that.
No, but she wasn't interested in the other guy.
That's true.
Definitely ask
They
her
went
out.
out on one date and then that was it.
Oh,
But like
dude,
say
ask
he's
her
a
out for
friend.
coffee,
He's a
right?
friend of the other guy who wants to ask her out though.
Yeah. So what? I mean, it's just not really that.
All's fair in love and war.
Yeah, and it's not like a huge deal, right? I mean, you're asking her out to coffee or whatever, you start talking, and who knows where things go from there, right? Yeah, as far as your friend goes, right? Like he doesn't get dibs, right? Women aren't like something you get dibs on, right? It's not like the last piece of pizza or something, right? You just if you're interested,
Really?
right?
Oh.
Your buddy doesn't there isn't some sort of I don't know.
Bro code.
Yeah.
So
I don't
that's
know.
well, no, bro code is something
It's
only
not like
comes
they were in a serious relationship,
yeah,
right?
bro code only comes into
So-
effect when you're actually in a relationship with somebody.
Yeah, if she had been dating this guy seriously, yeah, then you'd have a problem, right? But I mean, if she went out for one date with him, I mean, she's on the market, right? She's saying yes to people. You should strike while the iron's hot. Anyway,
All right.
that's
Thank you,
good.
John, for that.
Thank you,
wonderful
John, for
advice.
coming on. That was
appreciate
some
it,
dropping some wisdom on us, you old man.
Yeah. All right, guys. You have a good night. All right.
All right, you too, boss.
All right, so we're gonna end here shortly as well.
We still have Tom's take. It's amazing that I still have the same exact note for that after all this time.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Thanks, man. I was classically trained.
Sure.
I was. I just don't show it that often.
Uh-huh.
No, legitimately. Anyway.
All right, so this is a pretty quick, simple one. We were considering what I dislike about it. I had a nice day, so I was having some issues with it. But group texts.
No.
They are the worst. Everyone hates group texts. You get it, especially when it's. Well, I don't want to say especially, but take for example, you have a family. Your family. I have a very large family. And then someone texts something, and then everyone wants to respond, and then everyone starts responding to other things. And first, before you realize what's going on, your phone's literally buzzing off the hook. It's trying to make its way off the table or out of your pocket, wherever it is. And then if everyone's on an iPhone, then you can hide the conversation and not notifications, but then you look at it and you have 65 text messages that you have to look at. And group chats people just need to stop doing that. It's not an okay thing to do. It's immoral. It's adding, if you want to talk to somebody, talk to somebody.
Is it more immoral than denying a El Salvadorian entrance into a country when he and his family are about to be killed by a cartel?
Yes, it's just about the worst thing to include a chat that doesn't want to be included in it.
Oh, jeez.
It's almost as bad as hiding the remote.
Ooh. Ooh.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's all I got for you.
That's Tom's take, everybody. Brought to you by the Washington Bullets. All right, guys, it's enough. Time to change it back. Nobody likes the Wizards. I've got one thing to say just quickly about the NBA trade deadline. And there weren't a lot of big moves that were made. There were a couple of small moves that might help fringe teams, teams that are on the edge of the playoff race get into the playoffs, but it's not going to help them go anywhere. So nobody really cares. But there was one move that helps the Cavs, I believe helps the Cavs a lot. And the Cavs obviously are the favorite in the East and most likely going to be going to the NBA Finals this year. And if you don't know, they acquired Channing Frye from the Orlando Magic, sent a draft pick and Anderson Varejao over to Portland. and Portland sent. Oh, well, what happened? Who did Portland? I think Portland sent a draft pick over to the Magic, and the Cavs sent Jared Cunningham, who's just a worthless guard, over to the Magic as well. Who cares? The point is, the Cavs got Channing Frye, and now they have a lineup, or what they should go with. It remains to be seen how they'll use Channing Frye, but my opinion is what they should go with is a lineup of Kyrie Irving at the point, J.R. Smith at the shooting guard, LeBron James at small forward, Kevin Love at the power forward, and Channing Frye at the center position, because he actually is quite an underrated defender. And in that lineup, you have five quality shooters on the floor, and two great drive and score or drive and kick guys in LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. And with Frye on the perimeter, it also means that Kevin Love can work in the interior like he used to with the Minnesota Timberwolves when he was putting up, 26 points and 15 rebounds a game. And the current makeup of the NBA is one that's, four outside the 3-point line, and one on the inside. And Kevin Love can be on the inside, can be the guy on the inside or the outside, which is great for versatility because he's a great low post scorer. He's a good offensive rebounder. He's also a great three shooter for a big man. And I think that if LeBron's 3-point shooting keeps improving over the year like it has been, he started off just absolutely abysmal. He's raised it to near 30% at this point, and it looks like it's just going to keep going up till the end of the year, until the playoffs. And if they can keep doing that, then I think their offense is going to be close to unstoppable, and they actually will be able to compete with the Golden State Warriors or the San Antonio Spurs in the NBA Finals. And that's the big trade deadline deal that I've got for you today.
You know what? I'm really glad this was at the end of it, because we wouldn't have lost all our viewers if we had opened with that.
What, you don't think that's interesting? Am I the only one who finds that interesting?
Maybe Colby will find it interesting.
Colby will, because it's his team. Maybe Cam Popick, if he listens every once in a while.
He definitely doesn't listen.
Yeah, that's true. I think he listened to one. But maybe my brother, because Colby DeMasi listens to it, right?
Yeah.
And so my brother lives with Colby DeMasi, and my brother's also a big NBA fan, so he might find it interesting. I don't know. He's probably already thought of all of this, because he tends to know a little bit, not quite as much as me, but he knows a little bit. And so we'll see. But I think all in all, this was a great trade for the Cavaliers to make, even though they had to give up a draft pick for him, because they're in the win now mentality. I am disappointed that the Celtics couldn't pick up Kevin Love to kind of push him over the top and into contention, but I really do like the Celtics team, and I really do like that Brooklyn pick, so I'm not too upset about it.
All right. Well, what's the last final ad? We got to make our money here before we.
Oh well, the last final ad is also brought to you by yet another tutor in Lincoln, Nebraska. Headline: We will use simple, attractive language for you. : If you can't understand the language of your book and want same simple paper that you can easily understand, then we can help you. We can make paper in simple language for you so that you can understand easily. Our writers are so qualified writers. They can easily make papers for you. They will give you the best paper, which will be so knowledgeable for you, and you can understand them very easily. These papers will be so useful for you. Do not contact with unsolicited services and offers. And brought to you by a tutor in Lincoln, Nebraska, everybody. Trying to help out the little guy.
I wonder if it's the same people.
It very well may be the same people. I mean, for a tutor who's trying to, write papers for you and teach you English, he's really poor he's got a poor grasp on the English language here.
Maybe he's really creative.
Maybe that's it. It's just abstract writing. And we just can't see the beauty in it. The Jackson Pollock of words.
All right, guys. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe. Bro Chat for the people. And we love you, Colby. Keep listening to us, Colby. We hope your work, school, or baby day is good on this fine Friday.
We love you, Colby.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys. Peace.